I need to be a purpose-preneur, right? Where I'm leading and driving purpose-driven businesses, because what's the point of just creating businesses just for profit, right? You need to create a business that has a bigger purpose than profit. Because when you do that, you're not only going to attract the best talent, because nowadays, believe it or not, especially with the pandemic, a lot of the talented folks, they want to work in a company that has a meaning beyond just the profit. And there was the great resignation. I don't know if you saw it during the pandemic. A lot of people who are resigning and wanting to go do something else because they realize that, hey, it's not just about the money. So I think right now, if ever, every company needs to figure out how to become a purpose-driven business. Number one. Number two, attracting capital. Now there's so many funds that are now starting to either allocate a portion or a significant part of their portfolio towards impact-based businesses. And the VC guys are now looking at it not just from a risk-reward perspective, but from a risk-return-reward perspective. Because now they are also asking themselves, like, hey, as we're deploying this cash, what good are we doing to the world, right? Because for them, they're actually seeing that it's not just as simple as risk-reward, but it's risk-return-reward. So I think being a purpose-preneur is the right way to go about it right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's a great day to tune in because my guest today has an incredibly powerful story that inspires us that not only can we achieve our dreams, but also give back in a meaningful way. Kuda Biza, who has been a serial entrepreneur since the age of 9, upon arriving in the United States from Zimbabwe with just $40 to his name, he attended university and launched his second company, a socially conscious apparel brand, from his dorm room. And after graduating as a valedictorian of his class, he spent over a decade in various innovation and e-commerce roles at a Fortune 500 firm, where he was responsible for launching a meal delivery subscription service that reached over $20 million in annual sales in less than 3 years. He also ran a $100 million e-commerce division. But perhaps most impressively, during that time, Kuda was also building his own companies with a mission to give back. Most recently is the co-founder and CMO of Nunbelievable, a mission-based baked goods company that donates a meal for every cookie sold. And it's a company that's backed by Tony Robbins, and the company has donated close to 2 million meals since its launch in 2019. Let that sink in for just a second. So he's an amazing speaker. I've had the opportunity to see him speak recently. He's delivered 2 TED Talks, and he delivers keynotes that inspire audiences to take action, achieve dreams, and impact social change through purposeful entrepreneurship. He's the author of the book, The Spear Method, 5 Simple Steps to Balanced Success and Fulfillment. And he believes in being a force for good, and founded the Amani Hope Foundation, a nonprofit organization with a mission to empower underprivileged children in Africa by providing scholarships. Welcome, Kuda. That is quite a resume, and I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Adam. I've been looking at my calendar the whole day, just waiting for 4 o'clock to hit, and here we are. So I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited you're here because you have an incredibly powerful story, and it's really inspiring. And I've been lucky to hear it and get to know you over the past few months, and from what I understand from your story, it all started with a desire to get some ice cream. Is that right?
Yeah. So what happened was when I was 9 years old, on a hot summer day in Zimbabwe, I heard the ice cream truck coming down the street, and I ran into the house looking for my mom, found her. She was knitting in a bedroom, and I asked her for $1. And she said no, because I'd been naughty in the morning with some visitors at home, and I wasn't really listening and embarrassed my mom a little bit. So as a way to punish me, she was like, hey, Kuda, you're not getting ice cream money. So I started asking myself, like, hey, how can one person control my ice cream dreams, right?
Right.
And what is it that I need to do to control my own ice cream destiny? So they say that, necessity is the mother of invention. And because I needed an ice cream, I invented a business for myself. So I went to my neighbor and I offered to clean her windows. I'd never cleaned a window before in my life. But somehow she was like, okay, I'll give you a shot. So for $5, I spent 3 hours cleaning my neighbor's windows. And I quickly realized that, oh my goodness, if I could just do this every single day, I'll make about $35 a week. And for a kid who's like in, third or fourth grade, that's a fortune, right?
Right.
But an interesting thing is that at a very interesting age, I somewhat understood the concept of capitalism. Mm-hmm. So for the second home that I went to wash, I actually wasn't the one who did the windows. I went to my friends in the neighborhood, 2 of my friends, and I said like, hey guys, I'll pay you $1 each if you clean the windows for this house. I'm going to go get the deal. And then once we get the deal, you guys can clean the window and I'll give you $1. I'll give you $1. We all have ice cream. What they didn't know was that I was being paid $5.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would get the $5, pay my friends $1 each, and I'll keep the $3. But they were the ones who were cleaning the windows. But those were essential life lessons I learned at a very young age. The first one is that if you see a problem and you come up with a solution for it, you get rewarded. I saw dirty windows. I came up with a solution and I got rewarded. And then I also learned that you need a team, right? If you want to scale. So I focused on the selling and had 2 friends who were really, really happy that they were getting $1 every single day. Like that summer, they were pretty much guaranteed to eat an ice cream every single day. And all they had to do was sacrifice an hour of their time, because the 2 of them, it'll take them about an hour to do the windows. But when it was just me, it'll be about 3 hours. So you have to figure out how to become efficient, right? So For me, it was okay to sacrifice the $2, but I got my time back and I still got money out of it. So at 9 years old, I quickly figured out that, hey, entrepreneurship, I think this is my jam. So I just need to figure out to solve as many problems as I can. And if I do that, I'll be rewarded handsomely.
Yeah. Well, it's so fascinating when you learn that lesson at 9 years old, because 9 out of 10 or maybe more 9-year-olds at that age would be like, just kind of go pout after their mom says no and go to their room and throw a tantrum or something like that. But you found a solution. So do you think that that's kind of a genetic thing, or do you think that there's some kind of something that you learned or you picked up along the way that led you to that kind of mentality?
So what happened was 2 years prior to that, Zimbabwe was struck by a severe drought. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was a New York Times article, front page article, that said Southern Africa struck by its worst drought of the 20th century. So I lived through that. Mm-hmm. There was no food, nothing. So the only way we survived was through donations from people. And one day I got to ask my dad, I said, like, hey, these nonprofit organizations like World Vision, where are they getting the donations? And my father's response is what changed my life. He said, successful businessmen in America are donating some of the money they're making in business. And then these nonprofits are using that money to buy the food that's feeding us. Mm-hmm. So at 7, I was like, I want to be a successful businessman. And not only do I want to be a successful businessman, I want to go do it in America.
Right.
So when 2 years later, when this ice cream situation came about, because I had already had that whole dream of becoming a successful businessman, I think it was just the perfect opportunity and the timing, because in my mind, I was like, hey, this is the perfect time for me to learn how to become an entrepreneur. So let me just do it now. So
Mhm.
I am a firm believer in living in the now. And I define now as no opportunity wasted. So this was a perfect opportunity for me to actually, start learning and apprenticing on how to become an entrepreneur. So I took that opportunity. So that was really the genesis of it.
Yeah.
So what I don't know is if my father had never told me that story of like successful business people in America providing donations to nonprofit organizations, I probably would have, either waited for my dad to come back or maybe behaved the next day so that I
Mhm.
could get the dollar. So that's really the genesis of that.
Yeah, that's powerful. So it sounds like too, like your dad had a lot of influence on that. Is that true? Did your dad have a lot of influence on kind of your mindset as well as far as shaping the direction of your life and your parents as a whole?
Yeah, my parents did, but I was the only son with four
Mhm.
sisters. So in a family dynamic like that, I would spend a lot of time with him. And he was like my first role model and learned a lot from him. So
Yeah.
yes, I do believe that he's had a lot of influence on me and my life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So and that's a powerful kind of dynamic too, because not a lot of people can, I think, relate to that idea of how growing up in that challenging time, in a famine, in those kind of circumstances, and then adopting that mindset of like, well, yeah, but I want to be a person that goes and fixes these problems. That's just such a powerful message. What was it? I know, like, for a lot of us, we might not be able to understand that. What was it like growing up in that that time of such significant challenge, famine, and all of that? What was that like?
Well, what I'll tell you is that it was really, really hard, right?
Sure.
Because for millions of families in Zimbabwe, we didn't really know what we're going to have for dinner the next day, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
there was just no food in general, right? Number one.
Right.
Number two, it's very hard as a parent, right, to tell your family that, hey, I don't know, I'm going to feed you. So I could see with my parents the struggle that they had.
Yeah.
But we were actually fortunate we were living in the city. There were people in remote villages that were literally starving to death. We
Hmm.
would read in the newspaper, you know, X amount of families have died because they didn't have any food. So it just leaves a mark in your mind or in your life that you always want to address. So that's
Right.
why ever since that window cleaning business, almost every other business that I've started has had a social tie-in, a social cause to it. So when I was in college, the apparel business that we had, we were providing scholarships for kids, to go to school.
Hmm.
And then with the cookie company Nunbelievable, as you mentioned, we have the one-for-one model where we're providing meals to feed people, and then other initiatives as well. So I
Yeah.
think part of me going through that experience has actually made me realize that instead of being an entrepreneur, I need to be a purpose-preneur, right?
Oh, I love that.
Where
Yeah.
I'm leading and driving purpose-driven businesses, because what's the point of just creating businesses just for profit, right? You
Right.
need to create a business that has a bigger purpose than profit. Because when you do that, you're not only going to attract the best talent, because nowadays, believe it or not, especially with the pandemic, a lot of the talented folks, they want to work in a company that has a meaning beyond just the profit.
Hmm.
And there was the great resignation. I don't know if you saw it during the pandemic. A lot of people who are resigning and wanting to go do something else because they realize that, hey, it's not just about the money. So I think right now, if ever, every company needs to figure out how to become a purpose-driven business. Number
Yeah.
one. Number two, attracting capital. Now there's so many funds that are now starting to either allocate a portion or a significant part of their portfolio towards impact-based businesses. And the VC guys are now looking at it not just from a risk-reward perspective, but from a risk-return-reward perspective. Because now they are also asking themselves, like, hey, as we're deploying this cash, what good are we doing to the world, right?
Right.
Because for them, they're actually seeing that it's not just as simple as risk-reward, but it's risk-return-reward. So I think being a purpose-preneur is the right way to go about it right now.
Yeah, and that's such a contrary. I mean, I hear about a lot of different companies like yours, which is fantastic, that are donating portions of their profits to other, to charitable causes, and I think it's wonderful. And you still also see maybe these legacy businesses or these businesses that are so profit motive focused. So it's almost a contrarian view. But when I look at companies like yours, or like the many companies that you started, there's a lot of success there, even with, and maybe because of the contribution aspect of it.
Right.
Is there ever any, or has there ever been any point, like when you're starting up, where it was difficult to maintain that balance, or did you find yourself kind of getting afraid of not being able to pursue that mission or anything like that?
Yeah. So it is difficult in the sense that traditional investors are going to ask you the question of like, hey, why are you taking some of the profits away to support a social cause, right?
Right.
And for us, it's fine if you don't believe in that. We won't take your money, right? Money is abundant. That's kind of like my mindset. So if one person says no, I'm pretty sure if I continue knocking on doors, there's going to be a right door out there that's aligned with the way we see the world and that's willing to align their investment with us. So the difficulty has been there, obviously, because only now is the whole conscious consumerism movement really starting to take off. But I think the good thing is that there are now so many case studies of purpose-driven businesses that have actually built solid, sustainable businesses that more and more investors are starting to be comfortable. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Warby Parker, right? The eyewear company. They also have a mission-based model, right? But they built a business and are quite successful right now, right? I think they're in the billions of dollars in valuation. So they're a unicorn, right? Although they're giving back. Tom's Shoes was also a pioneer at that. But now more recently, you have Bomber Socks, right? Another company that's generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And they have kind of like a buy one, give one model as well.
Yeah.
But there are also other companies that are quite big. Some of them are actually even publicly traded that are now starting to realize that they have to become purpose-driven if they are to compete and survive in this new normal. So, for example, Procter & Gamble, P&G, we probably use their products every single day, right? Because they own brands like Gillette, whole nine yards. They have a pretty impressive portfolio. Now, picture this. Their revenue has grown by the billions of dollars in like the past 2 to 3 years. One thing that they've started doing, in addition to publishing an annual report, is publishing something called a citizenship report. Because they've realized that in addition to just talking about the dollars and cents that they're making and generating for their shareholders, they have a sense of responsibility to talk about how they're being a good citizen in the world. Yeah. And they've also even started to come up with initiatives to support social causes. So Pampers, which is one of their brands, and it's a diaper brand, they now have an initiative where for babies that are born in the ICU, they get free diapers from Procter & Gamble. They have another brand in the women menstrual business where they're also providing, pads and tampons to girls in, remote places and they're the underprivileged of society. And this is all published in their citizen report. And part of it is because they're also realizing that it is good business to do good.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you see that? How do you see that shift going right now? Is it, are we reaching a tipping point where more companies are starting to do that? Like where we're starting to see that becoming the norm, or is it still finding traction?
I think it's still finding traction. I think we have a lot of way to go, but I think we're making good progress, because what's interesting is that the millennials, the Gen Zers, they're also now starting to come into the marketplace with their own ideas, with businesses. And these younger generations tend to have more for purpose, social cause angle to some of the businesses they're launching. But we have so many issues globally, right? So look at just the SDG, the things that the UN is addressing as kind of like global issues, right?
Right.
We have a long way to go. Like hunger is still a pretty big issue. Illiteracy is also still quite a huge issue. There are a lot of health issues across the world. So we cannot leave some of these issues just to governments and nonprofit organizations to figure out. The people who are actually best equipped in solving problems are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That's what entrepreneurs do. We solve problems. So as if we can get more entrepreneurs onto the table, thinking about how we can make the world a better place, we're going to now start seeing some traction. And some of the titans in business, like Richard Branson, the guy from Virgin, Strive Masiwa is a Zimbabwean billionaire who's in the tech space and telecommunications space. They've created an organization called the B Team, where now they're really calling upon business leaders to really now start taking responsibility and accountability on what they're doing to make the world a better place while they're also generating profit. So don't get me wrong, capitalism and making a lot of money is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing.
Yeah.
But the question now becomes, as you're making a lot of money, what else can you do to make the world a better place? Because, this planet that we have, it's for all of us. As humankind right now, we all have one home, which is Earth. So what can we do to make sure that this home that we have and we've been given the responsibility to be stewards of, how can we be good stewards of this world in a world where we're creating so much abundance and prosperity through the businesses that we're creating?
Yeah, I love that idea there. It seems to go a lot farther than, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates a number of years ago. I think they started that 99% foundation or whatever. I forget what it was called. Maybe you remember, but where they're donating 99% of their income or their net worth at the time of their death. But this goes farther than that, because it's like, no, while we're making that money, we need to contribute and we need to be the driving force. And I hope that the people listening that, might be leaders are listening to that part of it, that as entrepreneurs, as leaders in industries, we are the problem solvers. That's what what we do. Let's solve those world problems. Yeah.
And one thing I'll even caveat by saying is that sometimes you don't even need to start at a big global level, right? Because sometimes people go on, let's say, the UN website and they read the stat of 300 million children not getting an education. And be like, oh my God, where can I start? You can start where you are. You can start locally. Yeah. What are some of the issues that your community where your business is located is facing that you can address? Because charity begins at home.
Yeah.
And then once you're able to solve that, over time, you're probably going to be connected to other people who are also doing other things, or maybe you'll find ways to address some of the global issues. But we need to look at it from both kind of like a grassroots local level as well as a global level as well. So that's why even with Nunbelievable, although we know that hunger is an issue worldwide, our focus right now is the United States, because that's our backyard. So we're focused on just fighting hunger here in America. And maybe at some point we'll expand to take the initiative internationally. But there's so many people in San Francisco, New York City, some of these gateway cities where, there's a lot of people who are struggling, right? Since we're transacting business here in the US, how can we make our community better, since the community is also helping us build this business that we're building?
Yeah. What are you seeing right now as are you seeing that hunger as the biggest problem that we face right now as humanity? Is that why you're trying to tackle that, or are there bigger problems that we're facing that you see?
I think there are a lot of big problems, and everything is relevant,
Sure.
right?
Right.
Relative, rather. That's what I meant to say. So, for example, right now, if I was to take a needle
Mm-hmm.
and just poke you on your thumb, the pain that you're feeling in your thumb, that becomes the biggest issue you're facing right now, because it's happening to your thumb, and it's just me poking the thumb.
Mm-hmm.
So, to say that hunger is the biggest issue we're facing, I don't know if I can make that bold statement.
Sure.
But it is one of the biggest issues, because if there's no food and there's no sustenance, what's going to happen? People are going to die. If you're not getting the right nutrition, your health is going to deteriorate.
Yeah.
So food, hunger is so integral to people's survival that it is a big issue in that regard.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there's a lot of food that's being wasted. You go to some of these restaurants and some of these food chains, the amount of food that they're throwing away is quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And even like let's say with supermarkets, how many things go bad on shelf and they have to throw away? So the hunger issue is there not because there's not enough food in the world. The food is there. We just need to figure out the distribution. So that's why I like organizations like Feeding America and other food banks out there who are able to now take some of the food that could end up in a dumpster somewhere, but they provide avenues to then distribute it to people who need it. But yes, hunger is a big issue. The reason why I focus on it really is because of my personal connection to it. But it is probably one of the top 3 issues here in America.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, it's so, I mean, it's very powerful that you're focused on it from where you come from. And I know that Tony Robbins had a similar vision, as far as his background. I know you've been to his events, and he talks about his story of, being,
homeless and hungry.
Yeah. So I know you both have this similar vision, and he's even investing in your company, Nunbelievable. Is that right?
Yeah. So it was actually his idea.
Oh, was it really? Okay.
Yeah. So although I'm one of the co-founders of the business, Tony was the one who really set the vision of like, hey, what if we could create a brand that can fight hunger? And, Tony is all about taking action. So he didn't just want to say like, what if? He was the first one to come with the check to say like, well, here's the check to go figure it out. So it's great to have a person like him as one of the investors in the company. But what he's doing to fight hunger is incredible, because it's the 1 billion meals challenge.
Yeah.
Where he's on track. If he might have already hit the goal, I'll have to check. But he wanted to donate 1 billion meals in like 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So what we've created with Nunbelievable is another vehicle that feeds into that big vision. But again, with Tony, he's passionate about hunger because he experienced it himself. So because when you experience it and you're going to bed on an empty stomach and like, hey, the lunch I had might be my last meal for a few days, you realize the importance of it. But more importantly, you also don't want other people to experience it. So what I experienced as a kid, I don't want other kids to experience it. So if I have the talent, knowledge, and skills to be able to protect and prevent other people from experiencing what I experienced, I would love to spend my time doing that. And I actually left a very high-paying corporate job to focus on Unbelievable, because for me, it was more about the purpose. It was more about the mission. It was more about the impact that I can make versus, hey, I can stay in this big multi-billion-dollar company, get promoted, get a big bonus, but I wasn't making an impact, which is kind of like what I talk about in my book, The Spear Method, because I talk about balancing success and fulfillment. Because there's this whole school of thought that people think that you sacrifice one for the other. If you're going to be successful, you do it, at all costs.
Yeah.
No days off. You don't do things that give you fulfillment because you just focus on work.
Yeah.
And there's the reverse side of things, which is, hey, if you're going to be happy and fulfilled, you're not going to have the material success and so forth. But I'm a person who likes to question things. So my question was like, why can't you have both? Why can't you have success and also be fulfilled? So I went on a quest where I spent about 18 months interviewing people, doing research, and I actually realized that you could actually do it. And then I came up with the framework, the Spear Method, that showcases people how you can balance success and fulfillment.
Yeah. Can you share what those elements are? What each name for the SPEAR is?
Yeah. So for me to talk about the Spear Method, I'll send you my invoice. It's
right.
50,000 because it's life-changing stuff. So I just don't talk about it for free. I'm just joking.
No, yeah, I get you.
Yeah. The Spear Method, the S stands for seek your purpose.
Right.
The number one thing that makes people live lives that are unfulfilling, where they're not fulfilled, is because they're not living within their purpose. Now, first, let's define the word purpose. The word purpose is defined as the original intent. What does that mean in simple English? It means the reason why something exists. So imagine you're a car, a Lamborghini for that matter. The reason you were created, the reason you exist, is to take someone from point A to point B, and at some point drive really, really fast. But imagine you're a Lamborghini and you're being used as a garden, right? Someone buys you, they fill you up with sand, and they plant trees in you.
Right.
Do you think if that Lamborghini had emotions, do you think it will feel fulfilled? No. A Lamborghini feels fulfilled when you're revving up that engine, right? So that's the same thing with us, right? We need to make sure that we have clarity and insight as to what is our purpose, the reason why we exist. And then once you figure that out, and in my book, I have a whole chapter and a section that's really focused on helping you figure out how to find your purpose. You go into the second phase, which is P, and P stands for planning. Because once you know what your purpose is, the next thing that you want to do is you want to come up with a plan. Mark Twain came up with an amazing quote that says the two most important days in life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. So once you find out why, it doesn't end there, right? You now need to come up with a plan on how you're actually going to live out your why. So that's the second phase. And the interesting thing is you were talking about how I came to America with $40 in my pocket for college and whatnot. In college, for my undergrad, I double majored. I was an aviation student because I love to fly. And I was also a business student because I had that whole entrepreneur thing going on.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that when I would go to the airport for my flight school, they would tell me every flight needs a flight plan. Oh, okay, cool. Imagine you hop on a flight and you see the two pilots are like on TikTok, they're just hanging out, and they go like, oh yeah, we don't have a flight plan, we're just going to wing it. Are you really going to feel safe and comfortable going on that flight?
Right.
Probably not, right?
No way.
So every flight needs a flight plan. So for you to go from point A to point B, for you to go from, oh, wow, this is my purpose, to actually arriving at your purpose, you need to have a plan. I would go to business school and the same thing would be said. Every business needs a business plan. But how many people in life are walking around without a life plan? How many people are walking around without a plan on how they're going to achieve their purpose? Right? So you need to come up with a plan, and that's the second stage. Now, think about it, right? I shared that Mark Twain quote that I love, which is the two most important days in life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. But I've spent hours and hours and hours thinking about that quote. And I realized that he left it incomplete so that I could finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I believe is true is that there are 3 important days in life. The day you're born, the day you find out why, and each day you act on your why. So the third part for the SPEAR method is execution. Because if you do the hard work in figuring out your purpose, you also do even more hard work coming up with a plan, but you don't execute the plan. What's the point?
Right. It's so amazing how many people miss that step or they just don't take that step. Yeah.
Exactly. If you want to win the championship, you have to go execute the plan, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If a coach calls timeout and say like, hey, with 5 seconds left on the clock, we need a 3-pointer. And then you go in and then you don't pass the ball and you don't execute the shot, you're not going to win the championship.
Yeah.
So we need to execute. And a lot of people miss that part, like you said. And it's painful because, yes, you execute and maybe you might not really get the goal you want, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you're better off just taking the shot.
Yeah.
And then the A, right? Because we've done seek your purpose, plan, execute. Now we have A. A means achieve. So there's a Newton's law. I forget which one it is, where like for every, force applied, there's an equal and opposite force. So when you take action, there's going to be some sort of result you're going to get. So the important thing is you want to track and measure that result. So I'm talking to a guy who's done what? Ironmans, right? You're a triathlete. So you know for a fact that as you're working on, becoming an Ironman, right? Before you actually achieve becoming an Ironman, you're going to come up with a plan on your training, right? We're talking about coming up with a plan, and you're going to go execute that plan. And as you're executing that plan, one of the key things you're going to need to do is you're going to need to keep track, right? Your achievements. If you're starting from zero, you've never ran a mile before, you're going to need to track like, okay, now I can run a mile. Now I can run 5K. Now I can do a half a marathon. And now I can do a full marathon. So good.
Mm-hmm.
You're making your progress to then go compete for your Ironman. You do the same thing for swimming. If you're like me and you don't really know how to swim, you're going to need to learn how to swim. So you're going to need to track your progress there and see your achievements of certain milestones along the journey. So your purpose could be here, right? It's this big, hairy, audacious goal, and you're starting here. You come up with your plan. You start executing on your plan. In the achieve phases, you want to be measuring where you are in relation to where you need to be so that you can go back and have a feedback loop to either tweak your plan a little bit differently or tweak your execution a little bit more differently in order for you to get to where you need to be. Yeah. Because let's say, for example, you set up this goal of, hey, my life's purpose is to be in the perfect, most optimal health that I can be so that I can inspire my kids, I can live long and spend time with my grandkids when I have a lot of energy. If you're not actually measuring if you've dropped the weight, if you're like at the right body mass index and so forth, how are you going to know when you've arrived at the goal? Mm-hmm. So the achievement stage is really for you to track your progress and use that as a feedback loop so that it influences the amount of execution you need to take so that you stay on track and actually hit your goal.
I love that. That's so important. Yeah. Yeah.
And then R, which is the last one, is repeat. You just want to repeat that same process until you get to your purpose. And then once you get to your purpose, guess what? You find your next purpose. Because people can have multiple purposes in life. Because life is in stages, right? So maybe right now your sole purpose is to build a thriving business. But then there'll come a point in time when you'll be like, okay, I've done my part. Now it's time for me to enter my second career. And maybe in the purpose then is impact, legacy, and all these different things. So you then literally repeat the same process and say like, hey, what's my purpose right now? What's the plan? you go execute the plan, and then you achieve whatever result you achieve until you get to repeat that process until you achieve the purpose. So that is the SPEAR method.
Yeah, I love that whole framework there, because it captures a lot of different elements. And when you're talking about the Ironman journey, when I first started on that process, I looked at like finishing an Ironman. It scared the heck out of me. I mean, I didn't know how to do it. There was just like no way I could picture myself where I was at to where I could be. It just took that element of like just taking that step and getting that feedback. You're so right. It works like that. And then at the achievement part, that last section you talk about with repeat, that's so important too, because when I don't know if you found this too, but this is true for me. Like when I achieve a goal, or when I take it out to achieve a goal, when I cross the finish line of an Ironman, it's like I have a moment, like 15 seconds of like this euphoric moment, and then it's like, okay, well, where's the pizza? It's all you're on to whatever's next. So you have to have like that next thing. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I love the way you frame that. That's so important. And then, so I kind of want to go back to something you touched on, because I think this is really, something big too. You were talking about fulfillment with regard to, balance in terms of how you, and that's even in the name of, of your book, where you talk about the SPEAR method. So in terms of finding balance, you've done a lot of things. I mean, while you were in your career, you were building businesses, and, that can be overwhelming for a lot of people to think about doing something like that, focusing on a purpose-driven mission while working in a career and working for somebody else and making sure, and also, having a family, that kind of thing. How do you, is the SPEAR method part of finding that balance? How do you find that balance?
Right. So I think with balance, it's really all about taking the time and really understanding yourself, right? So it's all about self-awareness. Because if you have a lot of self-awareness, you'll be able to know, like, okay, I think this is kind of like, what I need to do at this stage in my life in order for you to get to where you need to be. What a lot of people don't do is they don't take the time to being self-aware. They don't know their limits. They don't know what they're good at, their strengths, their weaknesses, and things like that. So you're only able to achieve balance in your life when you're self-aware, and the areas that you need help, you bring in the help. So you're talking about building a business. Some entrepreneurs try to do everything themselves, and your life will never be in balance, right?
Right.
Because I'm a firm believer that sometimes you need to have focus and let other areas be out of balance, or at least have other people come bring in balance in those areas of life in order for you to get to where you need to be. So because I'm self-aware and I know what my strengths are, instead of me trying to work on my weaknesses, I get other people to help me on my weaknesses so that I focus on being the best that I can be in my strengths. Yeah. Because then if I get help, so like, let's say in my life, my wife and so forth and so forth, they help in the other areas that are important for me. And then I focus on achieving what I'm really good at. You will then find balance, because now I don't have to worry about cooking dinner tonight because my wife has that covered. So I can really focus on building the business, and, because I'm focused there, she's, now I have enough time to not make dinner and spend more time with her. She's not focused on building a business because I'm doing that. And then that's how you achieve balance. But it takes you being self-aware and accepting that there's some areas that you're going to need others to help you. And then there's just some areas where you're going to just need to laser focus on, right? Yeah. So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. Now, do you have a method or a suggestion for people to kind of find out where their strengths or weaknesses is? Does that come with like where they're...
I have a little trick. So send an email, a text message to maybe 10 people that know you really, really well, and just ask them one question. And the question is, what makes me unique? Wow. What you're going to find is people are going to just tell you the things that you do really well and probably just come naturally to you. And because it just comes naturally and normal to you, you might not fully appreciate it and might not even know that this is one of your strengths because for you, it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be one way for you to quickly figure out what your strength is, right? And then once you know what your strength is, it becomes easy to then figure out what you're not really good at because now you know what you're good at. So it's kind of like an elimination type of process where figure out what you're good at. And then you can then figure out, like, for the other things that people are saying you're not unique, well, where do you feel you stand? And then you can quickly figure out where you fall within the spectrum. But that's one tactic I've used in the past to get validation of, like, oh, I think I'm really good at this. Well, let me ask people and see what they say. And then if the majority of the people are saying the same thing, then you kind of like get your validation.
Yeah. That's such a great tool. I love that idea. And the fact that, I mean, a lot of us overlook this idea of, like, first look at what you're good at, and then, you'll be able to eliminate what you're not good at. Because then if you're doing a lot of that stuff, you can focus more intently on it. I really like that. And obviously something I need to hear because as we get overwhelmed in our own lives, I feel that too. So you are working on, I mean, you've delivered 2 TED Talks, which are great, by the way. You go into more detail on the SPEAR method and they're really great. So check those out if you're listening to this. But you're kind of leaning into that speaking part a little bit more too. Where do you want that to lead you? What is the next step on the speaking tour?
Well, the speaking, I really just want to be on more stages. Mm-hmm. My passion is to inspire minds. And part of the reason why I give speeches around taking action, is really because I feel like a lot of the time we know the things that we can do, but we don't take intentional action to achieve those goals. And for me, like, if you look at my life, the odds were stacked against me.
Yeah.
When I left Zimbabwe, I came to America with $40. I was a teenager. I did not know a single soul in America. I left my loved ones, everything that I knew, everybody that I loved, tens of thousands of miles away. And in a situation like that, it can be easy for you to crack. But because I knew my purpose and I had clarity on, like, what I needed to do, it was now all about just taking action. Because if I took action towards my purpose, it just becomes a matter of time in me either figuring out maybe this is the thing or maybe this is not the thing, or you achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, right? And then you move on to the next thing. So that was really it for me. So I love speaking because when I tell my story and people get to realize that, hey, wow, like, if a guy like me can come to America and do it, what about you? Like, you have people who have, families, they have relationships, they even have, like, the resources around them and the network. And all they just need to do is really just believe in themselves, have confidence to say, like, hey, I'm going to give this a shot and see where it goes. Obviously, nothing in life is guaranteed, but one thing can be guaranteed, which is, if you don't take action, you're really never going to achieve your dreams, right? Yeah. So you're better off giving it a shot and see where you go.
Yeah, that's such a great message, and it's so simply put too. I mean, we all get trapped in the complexities of our own minds, where the simplicity is, like, if you have clarity of vision or clarity of purpose, you just take action. It's a simple step. But man, our minds complicate that so much that we just don't, that we get stuck in that analysis paralysis or what have you, the things that get in our way. Now, so if you had an opportunity, now let me ask this a different way, actually. So do you, today, looking back on when you left Zimbabwe, to pursue, this dream and this purpose, are you grateful about the challenges that you had growing up that put you in the position you're in now? Or would you very quickly get in your time machine and bring $10,000 back to, Kuda Biza Jr. and help him on his way?
Yeah, I'm grateful for everything because it's what's made me who I am. Like, all of those ingredients needed to be there to bake this cookie. No pun intended, right? But yeah, so I have no regrets. I don't wish anything could have been done differently. Even the mistakes that I've made, I take accountability and full responsibility for that. And, it's about taking those learnings and really affecting the future. So for me, I'm more focused on the future rather than the past. Because what's the point of us talking about 16-year-old Kuda? Let's talk about the Kuda in 10 years. What can I achieve over the next 10 years with all the lessons that I've learned and the wisdom that I've gained over time? So that's the conversation I like to have and where I want to spend my energy. Because asking myself or like contemplating what I could have done when I was younger, it's not going to help anybody right now. Yeah. But spending more time and really thinking about who I can be and what I can do, that's the more productive conversation. So I have time for one more question because I have to jump on another call. So, what is it that you'd like me to share with your audience now?
Yeah. So, and thank you for your time so much. And I would love to know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What is the next version of Kuda that's coming around?
Well, it's quite simple. For me right now, I've entered a new chapter in my life. I'm a new dad. So for me, it's really just focusing on raising an amazing citizen, someone who cares about the world and someone who can really go out there and fulfill his purpose. And if I do get more kids with my wife, then it's really focusing and investing a lot of my time and energy in building them and making sure that they could be the best versions of themselves. So for me, that's really what I'm focused on right now, is being a good husband, being a good father. The business stuff is good. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to build big businesses and whatnot. But for me, family is really, really important. And I feel that God has gifted me a wonderful family. And I take that responsibility seriously.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for your time. I know you have a heart out right now, and I'm grateful that you've shared your wisdom and your experiences with us. Can't wait to see where you're going and hear the next versions of your talk and everything like that. And for those of you out there, if you want to if you want to see what Kuda's up to, KudaBiza.com, KudaBiza.com. You could find his information there. And Kuda, anywhere you'd like people to reach out to you?
The website is a good start. If you want Instagram, my first and last name, Kuda Biza, that's the handle. Same thing with Threads. I'm on Threads now. It just launched a couple of days ago to become the better version of Twitter. But Adam, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and can't wait to connect with you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.